pleasant good day. Welcome to the Apnu+Afc Tv Live. I'm joined by my colleague, Mr. Sherrod Duncan, as we continue to bring you the information as it unfolds, as it relates to the national recount, the examination of the ballot boxes, which has passed, and we're now in the process of examining those reports having been submitted by the CEO, the Chief Elections Officer, to the Ghana Elections Commission. Sherrod, good day.
Chris, a very good day to you as well. Viewers, welcome, and thanks to you for joining us again, yet another day of updates from the Apnu+Afc, and we are coming to the end of a prolonged election period, at the final day or days, and we're really happy that so many of you could have joined us. Again, we are combing through this report of sorts from the CARICOM observer team, CARICOM scrutinizing team, again looking at the 18% of the ballot boxes over the last, over 33-day period. They looked at 18% of the ballot. And while we're thankful for their hard work, we disagree with their general statement on 100% of the electoral process, having only looked at 18% of the ballot boxes.
Yeah, that's correct. So, of course, we continue to probe and examine the contents inside of the CARICOM report, but as Sherrod just rightfully mentioned, only 18% of the 100% of the boxes was actually examined by that CARICOM team that was in Guyana. And of course, we did share with you last night, and we will before the conclusion of this program, share with you the total amount of ballot boxes and the expected number of boxes per region that the CARICOM team should have at least examined. And of course, that would have been the margin of error. And of course, we'll break those down and of course give you those in percentage-wise as it relates to the amount of boxes that the team has examined. For example, in Region 8, the CARICOM team had only examined 5, as in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boxes from that whole region, or 1% of the total amount of boxes in that particular region, which is grossly inadequate to get a full in-depth sense in terms of the electoral process. 423 boxes out of 2,339.
And Chris, you know, for me, it's an easy way to analyze it. It's like a teacher giving students questions for an exam, and she looks at 18% of the responses, and she says it looks as though this student has an A, and gives that full marks, having only examined 18% of the responses to the question. And so that is the kind of context and framework you have to view this report through. Nonetheless, as we said, we are thankful that the CARICOM team came. You know, they did their best, even with the deficiencies that are obvious in this report. For instance, if you compare them, well, off the bat, in a sense, Chris, they should not be compared, because the team, the CARICOM team, that is, seemed to be at pains to say that they were only involved in a ballot-by-ballot count, and they thought that this idea of a forensic audit, the idea of an audit on the whole, was not a recount. And what they said in their own words was the process that GCOM engaged in was an audit, not a recount. So they seem to have stuck to a ballot count, a recount in the traditional sense, without examining the qualitative aspect, which if one reads the Chief Elections Officer's report, you will see that very in-depth analysis of the ballot boxes, a very comprehensive scrutiny. And he actually walks you through to how he arrived at his conclusion by stating how many boxes were affected by missing certificates of employment, oaths of identity, persons who would have been out of the jurisdiction, who are confirmed who are out of jurisdiction, but yet somebody cast a vote in their name fraudulently, persons who would have predeceased March 2nd, but yet somebody cast a vote in their name fraudulently. The numerous statutory poll books that were missing, or statutory documents that were missing, which affected GCOM being able to really validate how those ballots got into those boxes, while the CARICOM team only looked at the ballot in the boxes. So the CEO's report is far more comprehensive, and one will understand that because even the CARICOM team in their report admitted their limitation based on the number of personnel they had on the ground.
That's correct.
While it was only 3 of them, the GCOM was able to have 4 staff at every workstation, and again was able to assimilate more information into a more comprehensive, well put together, coherent report. The CEO's report, that is. And as per law, we are advised and we understand that the chairperson of GCOM, the chairwoman of GCOM, the Right Honorable Connor Singh, can only rely on the chairman, on the chief elections officer's report. And even the PPP, for their part, has really and truly told us of the importance of the CEO, the CARICOM team's report by saying, you know, we don't really need to read that. We could read it after the chairwoman would have made her decision on exactly what transpired on March 2nd, 2020.
That's right. And of course, just last evening, we did bring you that image with former Attorney General Anil Nandlall as he spoke with members of the media, where he sought to rubbish the CARICOM report as saying that GCOM does not have to wait on any information from CARICOM and they can read. So we'll bring you that image right now. Here is former Attorney General Anil Nandlall as he rubbished the CARICOM report.
Once that is examined, you will come to the conclusion that it does not provide for GCOM to await any order, any report from CARICOM. You will know that GCOM crafted that order and then it did not have that in it. That is absent. Then GCOM did an addendum at which there was a full meeting and deliberation, and were it to be included, GCOM was free at the stage of the addendum to amend the order to include the incorporation of a report from the CARICOM team. GCOM chose not to do so. So I cannot imagine that GCOM would want to await some report from CARICOM when the order doesn't provide. The order speaks very clearly and in mandatory fashion to the process by which GCOM is to conclude this exercise. And nowhere in that procedure is there a provision for CARICOM report to form part of the process ante the declaration. Perhaps at some stage, post the declaration, GCOM can have the CARICOM report, but speaking based upon the literal and clear language of the order, the order does not permit and does not allow GCOM to await any such report from CARICOM.
Right. So that was, of course, Attorney General Anil Nandlall, which he sought to rubbish the CARICOM report, as you heard him stating there, that GCOM does not have to wait on that report or even input any of the information from the CARICOM report to make an outcome. In fact, he went even further to state that the GCOM could look at the CARICOM report post-declaration, as in after the declaration is finished, then you could look into it. So Anil Nandlall there essentially has rubbished the CARICOM report that has been submitted.
Yes, Chris. And what we know at this hour, having said that, is that the GCOM team, the commission, is meeting currently. They're mulling over the report of the chief elections officer, which they are bound to do by law. The law tells us that it is the chief elections officer's report that the chairperson of GCOM, the Honorable Connor Singh, has to rely on with whatever outcomes she arrives at. And our commissioners are of the view also that that should be the position that the chairperson takes, that no other extraneous information should form part of the basis. Only the chief elections officer's report as per law. And we know that the chief elections officer has said that in his report, district after district, administrative region after administrative region, that the elections of March 2nd were not fair and they were not credible. And again, he walks us through how he arrived at that conclusion by showing you all of the anomalies, all of the occurrences which he was bound to look at as per the recount order. Again, The recount order stated that it was a recount of all ballots cast at the elections of March 2nd, 2020, including the reconciliation of ballots issued with ballots cast, ballots destroyed, ballots spoiled, stamped and deemed as necessary, their counterfoils, stubs, authenticity of ballots and the number of voters listed and crossed out as having voted, the number of votes cast without ID cards, the number of proxies issued and the numbers utilized, statistical anomalies and occurrences recorded in the code book. So a very comprehensive exercise, hence a very comprehensive report from the Chief Elections Officer, walking you through systematically how all of these things affected the final conclusion that he has drawn, how the ballots cast affected the electoral process through ballots that were destroyed, spoiled, stamped, unstamped, missing counterfoils, missing stub, the authenticity of some ballots that were in question, persons who were, again, outside of the jurisdiction and voted, predeceased March 2nd, and yet cast a vote. Looking at all this information, we came to the conclusion that the March 2nd elections were not fair and were not credible. And this is the report that the Apnu+Afc commissioners are saying it should form the only basis of any decision that the chairperson of GCOM arrives at today or in the days ahead. Again, we see obviously that the CARICOM team only stuck to the first part, is a recount of all the votes cast on March 2nd. And they seemingly left the exercise at that point.
Correct.
While the Chief Elections Officer had a deluge of information showing all the irregularities, all the anomalies, all of the other issues of fraud and so on that occurred on March 2nd, 2020.
Exactly. Now we have been bringing to you and sharing with you the wider conspiracy in terms of the entire geopolitics surrounding these elections. We made mention to you, and you yourself have been wondering why or how all of a sudden you've seen tweets from senators of the United States that you've never heard about, and you've constantly been asking yourself the question, these people are aware of Guyana, how all of a sudden then you saw a pronouncement from the OAS and pronouncement from Owen Arthur, and the list goes on. A wide net, and we did spoke to you about the geopolitics at play. Of course, we want now to bring to you a piece which my colleague Sharon Duncan will introduce, and we'll continue.
Great. So, Chris, it was not only conspiracy locally, because what we have seen locally, a part of that wider conspiracy, even on the ground, you would recall the GCOM issued a press statement, for instance, that said the deputy returning officers refute claims by the presiding officer the deputy returning officer refute claims that presiding officers instructed them not to include documents in the ballot box.
Yes.
You would also know, Chris and viewers, that the presiding officers that worked, for instance, on the East Coast were invited to a meeting, especially in those areas where the ballot boxes were void of their statutory documents, were invited to a meeting by GCOM. No one turned up. This was on March 7th that GCOM put out this press statement. So it feeds into now a more international conspiracy, and we know some of the actors in this. We see the posturing, for instance, of the Bruce Goldings, of the Ralph Gonzalez, of other actors in the region. The OAS seem to have a fixation on with speed, and there is a wider also network at work here, and we just want to harken back to some of that. Take you back to, for instance, 2014, and this is an interview that was done quite recently in which a whistleblower talks about how Cambridge Analytica, where she was an employee, sought and conspired with the PPP administration in 2014 to rig the 2015 elections. Here's that engagement with the whistleblower.
Right, so in 2013, the SCL group, or Cambridge Analytica, first started having discussions with President Ramatar, and while engaging with the People's Progressive Party, the PPP, who the president was a part of that party, they conducted the type of political research that I talked to you about earlier. They did a behavioral poll and what they call a target audience analysis, a TAA, and that is large-scale national research where they would have done those qualitative focus groups and then quantitative surveys in order to understand as much as possible about the population, from their politics to their culture to their affiliations, the way that they do their decision making, and the way that really the country functions, the way that citizens engage in society. And that allowed them to build out an entire election strategy based on what they found out from that research. And from here, it looks like in 2014 was when they first presented the whole strategy, and it was a full strategy for 2015, from what types of engagement the party would need to have with people, from campaign management, how you could continue to gain insights from the population, what you needed to put on your billboards and print media and radio and television and digital. So they handed over all of that intelligence to the PPP so that they could use that for all of their communication strategy. And they developed a team for in-country and external support. So the SCL group would usually send out a satellite team to the country that would work with the candidate and the team that was in Guyana. And then there would be support from the headquarters in London for everything from data collection and analysis to management and digital and TV and development of campaign content, strategic hiring, whatever needed to happen. And that's really the way that they ran quite a lot of campaigns, providing limited in-person support, and then the rest of it would have been done from abroad, which, not all countries actually allow political support from abroad or even political support from foreigners. So it's usually a satellite team that can be hidden in country and is not obvious to the opposition that foreign assistance is active.
And how much money did the PPP spend on this?
This particular campaign was $420,000 for the support specifically that Cambridge would have given, and they would have spent a lot more than that on their local team and on the actual ad spend. So this is just the money to get the Cambridge Analytica support, but that's not how much money they're spending on, TV, digital, billboards, rallies, fundraising events, all of that stuff. This is a drop in the ocean to what the full campaign budget looks like.
The PPP hired Cambridge Analytica quite late in the election and didn't implement all of the directives coming out from London, so the PPP went on to lose to the African-dominated party, the APNU. So I want to know, why do you think the PPP weren't successful in the election in 2015?
Well, I mean, there's a variety of reasons for an election loss. One is that you don't prepare ahead of time. Another is that you haven't spent enough money. And the other is that you do not have a good enough candidate. And I would really say, there can be a combination of all of the above. From what I can see in the documents that I'm looking at, it seemed like the PPP was going to have a really hard time in that election, regardless of whether they had support or not. That they were having trouble engaging with their base, and a lot of people were completely unconvinced by President Ramatar's effectiveness in office.
So for someone sitting at home right now, is there a way of identifying the tricks these companies might be using in your elections? Is there something we can keep an eye out for?
Well, I would say these days it is kind of difficult to tell, because it used to be easier when there was a lot more work on the ground and you could actually see, foreign people in a country doing political work. That's obviously the biggest telltale sign. But these days, so much work is done digitally, and there is so much micro-targeting, which means that you are shown content that is made just for you, or just for a very small group of people like you, that the person next to you is not going to see the same political ads as you do, and therefore it's not going to be very obvious to you that there's tons of different political ads being cut, that there's an entire strategy behind it, because you can only see what is meant to be engaging for you. And it's this kind of invisibility, this lack of transparency, that is the most dangerous in what a friend of mine, Dr. Emma Bryant, calls the influence industry. And it usually has tons of funding being plowed into it, but you can't tell that it's happening, and that's why it is so effective.
So Cambridge Analytica collapsed due to public outrage, but I'm assuming a lot of the infrastructure and data strategies are still available somewhere. Is there another Cambridge Analytica out there working right now?
What's the lady's name? Welcome back. Here again is the whistleblower, of the one-time employee of Cambridge Analytica, walking us through what these cyber campaigns are all about, talking about how sometimes you have a satellite team, you might have a small team in the host country, but more than often they're operating from abroad, because all you need is good internet and a laptop. And so you're targeting specific messages to specific people to get them to vote a certain way. It's kind of like psychops, it's mind games. You're sending out messages based on people's background, people's ethnicity, and all of that. So this whole kumbaya that the PPP likes to talk about, we've one big family in this country, when they're micro-targeting messages directly to get you to vote in a certain way. This is Cambridge Analytica telling us exactly what transpired and the amount of monies that were spent, more than likely taxpayers' money spent in 2015, but also analyzing this young lady telling us why they would have lost all. So sometimes you have an unattractive candidate, sometimes you start the work too late, sometimes you don't put enough money into the campaign process that enables a company like Cambridge Analytica to do more. Sometimes you just start campaigning very late, sometimes you engage the company late. So just walking us through very systematically what transpired in 2018 as far as social media campaigning is concerned, and the engagement by the PPC administration then and Cambridge Analytica. For certain, we are going to show the video in its entirety very shortly on our Facebook page as well. Chris?
Mm-hmm. All right, and of course, as we continue to monitor, as we mentioned to you, in terms of all of these interference, locally and Caribbean, or in the Caribbean, and of course internationally. Just a few nights ago, we did bring you that interview with Mr. Rickford Burke and Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, and just in that interview, she did mention the fact that she's monitoring the situation in Guyana, and of course, she will be letting her voice be known as it relates to what she sees as foreign interference in the electoral affairs of Guyana. Just last night, Congresswoman made a statement, and I would want to quickly quote for you her statement. U.S. Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, who is also the co-chairman of the CARICOM caucus in the House of Representatives, in a blistering comment Monday night, condemned foreign interference in Guyana's election process. The Congresswoman said she has been monitoring what is taking place in Guyana and is eager to get back to Washington to be fully briefed on what the State Department is actually doing in Guyana, and is willing to take strong actions if necessary. So Congresswoman Yvette Clarke not only speaking with Rickford Burke a few nights ago, but just last evening in a blistering statement pronounced that she is eagerly awaiting to hear from the U.S. State Department on exactly what they're doing in Guyana, because she has been monitoring the situation as it unfolds in the country. She states here further, I know what is at stake in Guyana right now. It's not just the sovereignty, it is wealth. We have some corrupt, she's referring to the United States, we have some corrupt, I call them pirates, governing the United States right now. And I'm very concerned about the undue influence of the co-operators and entities outside of Guyana determining the fate of the Guyanese people. That cannot happen. I would encourage everyone, Guyanese America, to let your voice be heard. Yvette Clarke, the congresswoman there, speaking and continuing to monitor it. Again, she's saying that she's eagerly awaited to get back to Washington, D.C. because she wants to get a full briefing from the U.S. State Department as to exactly what is driving the interference, as she sees it, in Guyana's electoral affairs.
Yep. Interesting, Chris, to hear that. Again, going a little further than she did in the last interview where we first heard her on this situation that's happening locally here with all of this foreign interference. So kudos to her, and I'm certain people of this country are grateful for her assistance from her end as a congresswoman.
Exactly. Of course, the full detailed report can be found on the APNU AFC Facebook page, so we encourage you to go there and read for yourself Congresswoman Yvette Clarke pronouncement as it relates to what she sees as interference by the U.S. State Department.
Yep. Definitely interesting times ahead, and it's really would be useful for us to have maybe a commission of inquiry of sorts,
yes,
to really and truly look at the 2020 elections. The CARICOM team calls for a political audit of GCOM. I think we need a wider investigation with what really transpired. We have been in the ballot box. It's now for us to look externally to see who were the actors, who were the intellectual authors of some of what transpired during the March 2nd, 2020 general and regional elections.
All right, and of course we have been bringing to you the information. We've actually not been trying, but essentially we were able now to link all of the players, well, not all, because there are still some, particularly locally, and those corrupt businessmen and politicians in neighboring Trinidad and Tobago. But thus far, we have been able to draw the link between Mercury, the company that we just referred to there, the U.S. State Department, and some senators, the OAS and Bruce Golding, former Prime Minister of Barbados, Owen Arthur, current Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Mr. Ralph Gonzalez, and the list goes on. A full team of corrupt persons united to unseat a government because of the oil wealth that is found here in Guyana. I'll ask the operator quickly to put on screen that part of the Mercury document that we keep referencing to.
Schedule 1.
Schedule 1. Between the People's Progressive Party, Civic, and Mercury, and this company was paid $30 million by the People's Progressive Party, Civic. And of course, as you see, it states there that the company, foreign on behalf of the People's Progressive Party, Civic, will arrange meetings with the executive branch and the Congress of the United States, the Organization of American States as well. Now, when it comes to the Organization of American States, the current observer team that is led by the OAS to these elections in Guyana is no other than Bruce Golding. And in Bruce Golding's own case, when he had the incident there in Jamaica with drug lord Dudas Coke, one of the lobbying companies that Dudas Coke used during that time is actually a subset of the very same Mercury company. So here it is, Mercury, that is operating out of the United States, that was paid $30 million by the People's Progressive Party Civic, and all of its little subsets, they link those arms. So Mercury already knew that in these elections, the OAS will be observing these elections. So they point out they have the persons there in the person of Mr. Bruce Golding. And of course, he was given directive in terms of Mercury. Whether or not he's being paid directly by Mercury is another case to be seen. Then, of course, this now brings us to locally in Barbados. Owen Arthur, three-time Prime Minister of Barbados, himself close associate with Bruce Golding. So of course he then lends support to raise the voices and so on. Then it brings you now to the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Mr. Ralph Gonsalves, who just recently, as you saw him with the utterances that prejudiced the report in favor of the opposition political party.
Yeah.
We've shown you his relationship with the People's Progressive Party Civic back in 2013 when he was invited to Guyana by the then Minister of Housing, Irfan Ali, toward the east bank of Demerara. And Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves extended an invitation to Irfan Ali back in 2013 that he should come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, lend his expertise to the people there and so on. So you see the close relationship amongst these individuals from the get-go. From the get-go.
Correct, Chris. And it isn't lost on us either that Mr. Sylvester King comes out of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines electoral system, their version of GCOM, in which he is the supervisor, which I take to mean he is like the deputy chief elections officer there. And the opposition has called for him to resign because he has been involved in what they consider to be electoral fraud in their last elections. And so one would understand that he is known to Mr. Gonsalves and would have been part and parcel of the forces that brought Mr. Gonsalves to power. One would understand also that the same, that Mr. Gonsalves, Chris, right now is engaged in an elections petition in his home country. And who is his lawyer in that elections petition case? None other than Mr. Mendez, who was hired by the PPPC in many of their cases here challenging GCOM. And so, you know, these things are not are not just mere coincidences. And so when Brittany Kaiser, the Cambridge Analytical former employee, now whistleblower, talks to us about how these companies lobby and these companies are involved in all manner of untoward things on social media in their own using psychological warfare, psychological operation.
That's right.
It is not surprising at all when you factor in companies, as you've mentioned, like Mercury and the likes of Mercury. We see it's a whole interconnected web. And so one would understand again why a now questionable organization like the OAS has been so much on the front burner in these elections, much like in Chile. One would understand why Bruce Golding and Ralph Gonsalves and all of the others have been so very, very frontal, even though we're still in an electoral process. The elections are incomplete, that they have been making some very, very wild and reckless statement concerning GCOM and the elections results and a whole manner of things, as though they have a dog in the race.
Exactly. You know, just yesterday, for example, when that CARICOM report came out, almost like clockwork, in just 46 minutes after the CARICOM report came out, the OAS came out with a statement.
The OAS read the whole report.
They read the whole report. So it was, I mean, look, we can't say it's like they anticipated. They knew the contents of the CARICOM report. And in fact, we have our investigators who are still probing through a press conference.
Chris, did CARICOM, did the OAS make a comment on the chief elections officer's report?
No,
oh.
We see nothing.
Oh, yes.
Nothing. No, you got to put on that. when the CEO, the Chief Elections Officer of the Ghana Elections Commission,
The constitutional officer, the
That's right.
statutory appointed officer.
that's right, put out his report on Saturday, you heard nothing from the OAS,
Many days later.
nor the ACB countries.
Yeah.
I mean, we hear from them for a while.
Yep.
But suddenly, when the CARICOM report came out, 46 minutes after,
Yeah.
OAS issued a statement.
Even though the CARICOM team's report was longer.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Very interested indeed.
Very
What I was
interesting.
mentioning is that our team of investigators, not police investigators, mind you, investigators are still going through some press briefing or pronouncements by former President Barrett Jagdeo, which some has said that his comments the day before mirrors that of the CARICOM report that came the day after.
yeah.
So of course we're still going through that, and once we get the full details of that, we will share with you. Let me just quickly take you back to...
Chris, you did bring in the ABC countries, and on June 9th, they issued a statement in which they talked about the national elections recount being credibly completed. I just wanted to stick that in. Credibly completed.
There you go. So quickly, let me just go back to the Mercury document, the leg that speaks of final, operator, finally. Right, so we're going to put that up on the screen again. This is part of the Mercury document. Mercury is the company that the People's Progressive Party Civic paid $30 million to lobby on their behalf. And of course, the first document we just showed you is in which the Mercury stated part of their agreement is to work for on behalf of the People's Progressive Party Civic, that they will be lobbying and speaking with the executive branch of the United States government, the Organization of American State. You got that up, operator? Right. So this piece here, if you were able to see the contents therein, it says here, finally, would you consider asking Senator Mendez jointly with Senator Rubio, you know, you're familiar with that name, Senator Rubio, separately to issue messages about the importance of having these elections being free and fair, especially given Guyana's proximity to Venezuela. It is important for the people of Guyana to know that the U.S. government stands with them.
Geopolitics at its
Right?
best.
So here it is again. Mercury, the company, they could leave it up on screen for a while, operator. The company that the People's Progressive Party Civic paid $30 million, and part of the Mercury document, as stated, is that Mercury will lobby for and on behalf of the People's Progressive Party Civic, the executive branch of the United States government, the Organization of American States.
Yep.
And here part in the document, it says here, this is Mercury speaking and asking those persons who are part of the lobbying, finally, would you consider asking Senator Mendez jointly with Senator Rubio or separately to issue message about the importance of having these elections be free and fair, especially given Guyana's proximity to Venezuela. It's important for the people of Guyana to know the U.S. government stands with them. This is Mercury document. So when during the elections you saw tweets coming from Senator Rubio and Senator Mendez and the Mr. Mike Pompeo and all of these senators from the United States, you've been asking all of a sudden all these people, and then you see the part that it says here, it is important for the people of Guyana to know. Now listen, common sense will tell you, we're talking about all of the peoples of Guyana. This is specifically to the People's Progressive Party Civic supporters. For them, they must see and become agitated and excited that, hey, you see the American man says so. The senator, this was part, is psychological warfare as well. So they were lobbied on behalf of Mercury, on behalf of the PPP, who paid them $30 million to lobby them. Look, it's there in black and white.
Correct.
It is not the APNU, AFC, or Sherrod Duncan or Christopher Jones saying that. Here it is in black and white. This is the document the Mercury document that has been signed between the People's Progressive Party Civic and Mercury, in which they said they will be lobbying the executive branch of the United States government. They also state the Organization of American States, in which the same corrupt, tainted, disgraced Prime Minister of Jamaica, Bruce Golding, led. And here it is there. Senator Mendez, Senator Rubio, people who never been to Guyana.
Yeah.
But here it is in the document, they're saying that these gentlemen will issue messages, and we saw those messages during the elections,
Prolific messages.
one after the other.
Yep.
And then you saw on pro-PPP media houses and activists on their pages, look, Senator, this says so.
Yeah.
Look, Senator, who says
You
so?
have the activists,
all over.
You have the activists, the well-known activist Jerry Govaya. He
Of
was
course.
posting them as fast as
Of
they
course. You know?
Fast as they
So
go.
here again, this is another extract from that Mercury document. Finally, would you consider asking Senator Mendez jointly with Senator Rubio or separately to issue messages about... Take it off the screen. Bye.
Yeah.
Anyhow, forgive me. I got to go back to the phone. But
Yeah. Chris, as you're on that, I hearken back to an interview that Enrico Wolford did with the American ambassador and subsequently Gordon Mosley as well, in which, if you know ambassadors well, they never answer questions in yes or no. They have their own diplomatic speak, diplomatic language, which just means going around in circles. And the question was put to the ambassador, for instance, about being chauffeured around by someone who is under investigation by the American government, and she said that she is not at liberty to comment on persons who may or may not be under investigation by the American government, but that on her trip around various parts of the country on election day, she did stop intermittently to seek refreshments and may have met with different Guyanese and greeted them because, you have to have, water stops along the way, and you meet with many persons. And that was her response to the question about meeting with an infamous businessman in Essequibo.
Yeah.
Additionally, she was asked the question very pointedly, Madam Ambassador, were you lobbied specifically by some of these companies like Mercury and so on? And she did say that, well, as an ambassador, I meet with many persons who have varied interests, and as part of getting to know Guyana and the country and their peoples and the work that is happening here, I meet with many persons, but it's all in an effort to get to understand its people and so on and so forth and such.
Yep. So folks, we continue to share with you these information. We continue to ask you to be steadfast, and as we would say locally, hold a focus. Dep on your heights, dep on your medi. Because the gangsters in the People's Progressive Party Civic that we are dealing with here went to all links. They went to all parts of the globe. We wouldn't be surprised if the devil himself turned up and said that the PPP promised him this, because they will go to that extreme.
They have a plan. They have a plan to undermine this country, undermine its democratic institutions. When you're dealing with people like Mercury, the way Trump deals with people like Mercury, you see what happens in the U.S. They undermine democratic institutions. You see how the good bishop hasn't even he's barely smelling power, and he's already firing people, and who will have sleepless nights and all manner of things. So you can tell from the action what they intend for the people of Guyana. God forbid.
That's right.
God forbid.
So we continue to throw these out and provide you with these information, and remind you to keep focused.
Keep a focus.
Keep a focus.
Yeah. What we do know at this hour, however, is that the GCOM Commission is meeting there in deliberations, and the Chief Elections Officer, Mr. Keith Lowenfield's report. The chairwoman is going to listen to all of her commissioners, and then she's going to have a decision for the Guyanese people as to what, in her estimation, transpired on March 2nd. The Chief Elections Officer has made it known not only to the Commission but to the nation that the elections were neither free, fair, nor credible. Exactly. And that is the Chief Elections Officer's report. who it is our belief with the Constitution that the Honorable Justice Claudette Singh has to rely on in her decision making moving forward.
Exactly. You ever, you ever try putting on the glasses with it?
You're hurting yourself, Chris.
Fog. Yeah, yo. So, folks, we will continue to share you this information. Hold a focus and be very vigilant. These elections, there was a clear attempt by the People's Progressive Party Civic as far back as 2014, as we just showed you the whistleblower who revealed what the People's Progressive Party Civic attempted in 2014. Coming into 2020 general and regional elections, they took it a step further. They pull out all ends, paid $30 million to one company to lobby on their behalf. You've seen in the document that they've made reference to Senator Mendez and Senator Rubio, who will issue statements so that the people in Guyana will know that the elections, the United States government have are interested in seeing free and fair elections. And you saw a series of tweets. But suddenly, when we went into the recount exercise, and all of the anomalies, clear cases of electoral fraud started to reveal itself, the tweet suddenly went quiet.
And it moved to Caribbean personalities now.
Correct. Then the Caribbean leg, because it is a part of it. It is a
Caribbean
part of it.
personalities.
Tainted, disgrace, former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Bruce Golding, with his connection with the criminal underworld in the likes of the person of Dudas Coke. And the lobbying company or firm he'd use is part of the very same Mercury lobbying firm in the United States.
Yep.
And then, of course, it brings you to Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves, incoming chairman of CARICOM, himself currently in office as a result of fraudulent elections in his country, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You've heard the radio host spoke about characters such as Mr. Sylvanus King, who he referred to as a person who has no credibility. He is a shell. He made a reference to Mr. Sylvester King, who is also the deputy elections officer there in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as a front man for Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves.
Yep. Yep.
And the list goes on. Stay focused. God don't sleep. We will bring you the information as it relates to what is happening at the Ghana Elections Commission. As we mentioned to you before, the commissioners are in meeting with the chairperson, Justice Claudette Singh. And
yeah, anything breaks before 5, we're going to come back and let you guys know what is happening. Until then, we're going to see you guys at 5. On behalf of myself, Sherry Duncan, and my colleague Christopher Jones, our technical team behind the scenes, we're going to see you guys at 5. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe.